Aloha! Today we're going to make paper masks. It's going to be a lot of fun and we're going to use some of the same paper techniques as you've already learned for embellishing and designing our masks. There's no wrong way to make a mask. And what's even better is if you make a mistake, you can always find a creative, interesting way to make it better. Okay, let's get started. Our materials today. You can use any kind of paper. It could be recycled paper. I happen to have some construction paper. But even if you have just plain white paper, you can actually decorate it. If you have crayons, markers, colored pencils, anything like that, you can add designs and decorate it, which I've done already. Scissors, pencil, just in case. Glue is pretty handy. I use stick glue often when I'm making masks so I can get things stuck on faster. If you're going to use glue, the liquid glue is a little bit safer to use, but that's only because it'll stick longer. But this type of glue will be just fine, or you can use tape as well. So depending on how big or how wide I want my mask would depend on which direction I turn my paper. If I want it to be a tall mask, I would want my paper to be vertical. If I want it to be a wider mask, but not as long, I would have my paper horizontal. It does not matter which way you choose. I'm going to do vertical today. And let me see, since I have a design, I'm going to decide what do I want towards the top. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is fold it in half, match up my sides as closely as I can. Now, here's a very, very big and important hint. When you're making your masks, you need to know where your folded line or your mountain is. So we talked about mountains before, your folded line. Because when we cut this, we want to make sure that we are not cutting it into two pieces into one. However, that does happen. If you do end up with two pieces, you can find a creative way of attaching them back again. I'm going to turn it this way because I am right-handed. So I like to have my fold on my left so I can do my design to the right. I can design it any way. So sometimes I like to have points, but remember points are harder to cut, but still perfectly acceptable. And I want to use the majority of my paper. So I'm going to say I want to use 85 to 90% of my paper when I do this. I draw a simple design. If I don't like what I drew, I can trim it. But the larger I draw, the better it's going to be, because if I have to trim, it's going to make my mask a little bit smaller. So it's better to draw bigger. Then, again, I'm looking for my fold, so my fold is right here. And that's where I'm going to start my cut. Holding my paper carefully. Okay, now I'm not throwing out my extra paper because there may be pieces in here that I want to use for something else. And I open it up. If I did it right, I should have one piece of mask like this. If I made a mistake, I might end up with two pieces. But that gives me the opportunity to creatively get those two pieces back together for my mask. The next thing I might want to add are eye holes. So sometimes in masks, we want holes for eyes. Here's a good example of eye holes. I'm going to show you how to do that. But if you don't want to cut holes into, and eye holes are hard, but if you don't want to cut into it, you can always draw out and cut out the shapes of the eyes and add them to your masks. So I'm going to refold it. I am going to design my eyes. Okay. Now, I've designed my eyes. It does not touch the edge. So here's a trick. There's two ways of cutting this. You can cut from the outside edge, cut it out, but that leaves a cut over here. If I don't want to do that, I have to cut in the middle. And that's kind of tricky, especially with bigger scissors. So I'm going to use my handy dandy pencil and I'm going to poke through. Okay, so now I've created a hole in my project. I can now take my scissors and I can gently trim from inside that hole out for the eye. If your paper rips a little bit, again, that's just an opportunity to make an adjustment to your design. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so I did have to make a few adjustments to my design. It didn't quite come out the way I wanted, but that gives me an opportunity. A nose. So I can make a design where I cut it out of the edge and leave a hole in the middle, which is perfectly acceptable. But I like to cut a nose where it's a flap. So this is about the middle of my mask, maybe a little bit lower. Again, I'm cutting from my fold because I am making a flap. You can also create a nose and glue it down. That's up to you. And then my mouth. Now be very careful when you're doing your mouth. You want to do just half of your mouth drawn out. Okay, so let's see. I can do smiling, I can do frowning, I can do scary, I can do happy, I can do all kinds of things. I'm going to make a nice happy mouth. So I've only drawn half of it, and I want you to remember that. Only half means that when I cut this out, I'm cutting on that fold, the other half will automatically be cutting out. If you notice that when I cut from the middle, it just saves me a lot of time. Now I have that piece, I can take that out, and voila, there's my mask. My little nose flap, I can turn it out, straighten it up a little bit, so there we go. This is the beginning of the mask. This is not the end. Now I need to embellish the mask. I can use pleats, I can use fringes, I can use different types of stripes. That's what my colored paper are for. And again, I can use just plain white paper and color them and do them my own way. If I want two of something and I want it to be matching, then what I might want to do is fold my paper in half. So I'm going to cut two of something and I want it to match. Let's see. I just want a wavy line. Okay. I don't always have to do it drawn out. Drawing something out on your paper ahead of time just means that you will cut less often, or you're more sure of your cut, but it's not necessary. And what's neat is I have other pieces that I can play with and do other things with it. But I cut two of exactly the same items, okay? And then I can glue them down any way that I want, any style I want. So I like to play with my designs first and decide how do I want to do that. I'm going to use my glue. And here's a hint on glue. It is so easy. We're often taught to go glue down on our surface. But if you have a much smaller piece, smaller than your glue, that means a lot of extra glue is going on your surface and it makes for a messy surface. So what I like to do is I put my piece of paper on top of the glue and I use my finger to get that glue on there. Press it down, and I mirrored my two pieces here, so that means that they were the same this way, but I want to glue them down this way, so I need to make sure my glue is over here. So I really do have to think about what I'm doing before I glue it. Many masks are symmetrical, which means they pretty much match side to side or almost symmetrical. You don't have to do it. You can do asymmetrical, which means your mask looks different. It can look different ways. It does not have to perfectly match. You can add hair to it or fringe. Okay, so using the same technique as fringe. If I wanted it pleated, I can do my fan fold and cut it. If I want it curled, I would probably curl each piece separately. My mask is turning out a bit more symmetrical. That is a personal choice, and it does not have to be your choice. Remember, if I folded my paper, I double my paper up. It just means that there's less cutting I have to do later. Okay. To make curls, actually, I just need to roll my paper around my pencil. I can make beards, I can make mustaches. I have a lot of options here. Okay, in this case, I'm going to add my hair to my project by adding a little bit of tape on the back. If I want my hair to stick over and go over my project a little bit more, I would want to fold it a little bit, but that's not necessary if you want it sticking up. You can add all kinds of other designs, and don't be afraid to grab your markers, crayons, or whatever and add even more designs. So this was really quick, basic design, okay? You can add so much more to this and put so much of your own personal personality into this. So I'm going to show you two others that I've created. This one was a horizontal fold mask. So let me turn this around for you. Okay. So I folded my paper horizontally so I had a much wider mask. And this one is a half mask. I had a little bit of fun with this, and it would just be worn over the eyes and would probably not cover the nose or the mouth. So this would be a half mask. So ladies and gentlemen, these are some really fun basics to masks. I can't wait to see what you come up with. Have a lot of fun, enjoy, and send me your pictures and videos and show me all that you've done with the masks. Have fun. Aloha.